related to, and so conveniently next to, your various transform types, you have this combo box, which allows you to select your so-called reference coordinate system. This allows you to move, scale, or rotate in different ways. It defaults to view. View meaning that you're going to be doing any one of those transformations according to whatever view you're in, relative to whatever view you're in at the time. Now, perspective view, you can look at your view compass right down here, and this will give you a sense of, this will give you the world view. So you see Z is up, positive X is this way, positive Y is that way. It's actually not quite the same in a view coordinate system here. Positive Y is that way. If I hit Alt W, now when I'm in view mode, when I'm in view reference coordinate system mode, you can see that this compass down here, that compass is in world space. But you'll see my little, let's change this to the move tool so that we can get a good sense of what Z, Y, and X are. You can see right here Z is up, Y is that way, and X is that way. And that's relative to the perspective view, and also, incidentally, relative to the top view. When you're using view, it means that Z is always facing directly into your view. And so here, if I'm in a left view, even though world space Z is up, according to view coordinate system, Z moves straight back. Z is a depth into my scene. And so this will change around. You can see as I change to these different orthographic views, Z always stays going straight back into whatever view I'm looking at. But I can change that. If I come down to this combo box and I make it world, that means that manipulator that I have for moving will stay solid no matter what. You can see no matter what view I take, what view I change to, the manipulator is never changing. And in this mode, world mode, it means Z is always up and Y is always in one direction and X is in the other direction. And it will always match this little view compass here. And so world mode might be a little more intuitive to work in. But anyway, now there's these other types of modes. We won't go over all of these, but there's view, there's screen, there's world, there's parent. So let's talk about screen here. Screen mode means that whatever orientation I make this camera, Y and X are going to be up and down and right and left, and Z is going to be straight in. And that means that I can take this manipulator and move it around on a plane that is perpendicular to my view. And you can also see in the other views that my compass has changed to reflect that. So you see now it's all kind of off kilter. This just means that along Z, that is my angle of view. So my camera is out here someplace looking this way along Z. And we come up here and let's talk about local. That's the last one I'm going to talk about is local. If you change it to local here, that means that now the transformation manipulator always corresponds to this object's local X, Y, and Z axes. Not only does the world have an X, Y, and Z, but the object itself has its own internal coordinate system, which is X, Y, and Z. And it may have nothing to do with the world itself. So if I take this view up a little bit, and no matter what I tumble this view around to, the object's local coordinate system stays rock solid. And again, bears not necessarily any resemblance to the world coordinate system. So if I move this object around in X and Y, it moves this way. Around, up or down in Z, it moves that way. When that gets really good is when you do rotations. And so as I rotate this object on its axis, now you see that the different transforms will actually, this mode that you're in, the reference coordinate system that you're currently in, will remember. So if I change to rotate, it's going to snap back to view. If I change back to move, it's going to snap back to local because that's the last one I left it in. So this box remembers what you last left it in per transform. So if I change rotate to local, it's going to switch again just a little, ever so slightly, and that's going to allow me to rotate this object around its own local axis. So let's get it real off kilter here, and we'll see why that's beneficial. If I were rotating in view, now all of a sudden I'm rotating this thing around the view coordinate system where Z is up. But if I change it to local, now I can rotate this thing around its own local axis. That can be really hard to do in view. Now this also gets good in move mode. So if I've rotated that object all around, let's say if I rotate this and I rotate it so it's just just pointing that way, and then I want to move it, I can move this object. Now again, moving in view can be a little bit tricky to get it positioned exactly right. But if I move it in local coordinates, now I can move it till it intersects the ground, and then I can also move it up a ways. So I'm moving it along its own local z-axis. So if I want to scale this thing up so it hits the top of the roof there, scaling it up this way isn't going to do it, because that's scaling it along view, or even scaling it along world wouldn't help either, because that's just scaling it up with the world axis in mind. So it scales it in all these funny ways, these funny dimensions. But if I change this to local, now all of a sudden I can scale this no matter how I've rotated it or moved it around. Z is always up, and I can scale it in that one single direction, which makes perfect sense for an object like this. So I can further kind of rotate and position it until it's just hitting the side of the building there, and move it around. And now when I move it, moving it along the ground here can get really tough, because see how it's sort of burying itself into the ground because I'm moving along its local coordinate space. Now's when I can switch over to either view or world space, and now when I move it around, it'll always stay planted to the ground, but its rotation remains the same. Now if I get it into place, and now I also maybe want to rotate it in world view at this point too. Rotate goes back to local. That's the original one I had it in. But if I like the angle and I just want to rotate it back into place so that it's retouching this thing, again, now local becomes a coordinate system that doesn't really help me. Now rotating it in world coordinate system makes more sense, because now I can rotate it just along this relative to the world.